What if everything you thought you knew about human civilization was wrong? What if the story we've been told about our past was only the final chapter of something far more extraordinary? Deep beneath the pristine ice of Antarctica, where silence has reigned for millennia and the cold preserves secrets that time forgot, something waits in the darkness. It's not what you'd expect to find in Earth's most remote wilderness. Not ancient ice, not prehistoric fossils, but something that shouldn't exist at all. In 2019, a routine geological survey stumbled upon metallic structures buried 2 miles beneath the ice, geometric patterns so precise, so deliberate, that nature could never have created them. These weren't random artifacts, they were archives. Records left by minds that understood mathematics, astronomy, and engineering in ways that challenge everything we believe about the dawn of human knowledge. The implications are staggering. If these discoveries are what they appear to be, then civilization didn't begin 5,000 years ago in the river valleys of the Middle East. It began much earlier, in a place we never thought to look, by people we never knew existed. So before you drift into sleep tonight, let this question linger in your mind. What else lies waiting beneath the ice? And what will it tell us about who we really are? The morning of October 15, 2019, started like any other for Dr. Patricia Holloway and her geological survey team at McMurdo Station. The Antarctic wind howled across the frozen wasteland as their ice-penetrating radar equipment hummed to life, scanning the depths beneath what scientists believed was nothing but solid ice and ancient rock. But what appeared on their screens that day would shatter everything they thought they knew about Earth's most isolated continent. At first, Dr. Holloway thought it was equipment malfunction. The radar signatures showed massive geometric structures buried 2 miles beneath the ice, perfectly angular formations that stretched for hundreds of yards in precise mathematical patterns. Her colleague, Dr. Adrian Kessler, ran the diagnostics 3 times, each scan confirming what seemed impossible. Something artificial lay dormant in the Antarctic depths, something that had no business existing in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. "This can't be natural formation," Holloway whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air as she stared at the impossible data. The structures exhibited characteristics of engineered construction, right angles, symmetrical proportions, deliberate spacing that suggested intelligence and purpose. Yet according to conventional history, no advanced civilization had ever set foot on Antarctica, let alone built monuments beneath its ice. As the team gathered around the monitors in stunned silence, a chilling realization settled over them. Something had been waiting down there, preserved in the cosmic freezer of the Antarctic ice sheet, for thousands upon thousands of years. The following weeks transformed McMurdo Station into a hub of frenetic activity. Dr. Holloway's initial discovery had triggered what she privately called the most significant archaeological event in human history, though officially, the expedition remained classified under geological research protocols. Teams of specialists arrived on every supply flight, glaciologists, archaeologists, and engineers whose expertise would be crucial for what came next. Reaching whatever lay buried beneath 2 miles of Antarctic ice, Dr. Kessler coordinated the drilling operation with military precision. The thermal lance they deployed was typically used for ice core sampling, but never for something this ambitious. As the drill descended through layers of ice that had accumulated over millennia, each foot revealed a frozen timeline of Earth's climate history. But it was what waited at the bottom that defied all historical timelines. When the drill finally broke through into a cavity at the target depth, the team's excitement was palpable. The first metallic samples retrieved were unlike anything in the geological record. Dr. Sarah Finch, the expedition's metallurgist, examined the fragments under high-powered microscopes, her excitement growing with each analysis. The metal exhibited properties that shouldn't exist in nature: alloy compositions that required sophisticated smelting techniques, surface treatments that suggested advanced understanding of material science. "This isn't just worked metal," Dr. Finch announced to the assembled team, her voice trembling with the implications. "These fragments show evidence of precision manufacturing. We're looking at technology, not geology." The question that haunted everyone was becoming impossible to ignore. Who had possessed such capabilities in the prehistoric past? The breakthrough came when Dr. Finch's team managed to extract their first intact metallic plate from the depths. As the artifact was carefully transported to the temporary laboratory they'd established at McMurdo, the anticipation was electric. Under controlled conditions, with cameras recording every detail, they began their examination of what would prove to be one of the most extraordinary discoveries in human history. The plate measured roughly 3 feet by 2 feet, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to dance between artistic expression and mathematical precision. Dr. Holloway traced the engravings with gloved fingers, noting how the symbols followed geometric progressions that felt both alien and oddly familiar. The craftsmanship was beyond anything attributed to prehistoric cultures. The precision of the lines, the complexity of the interwoven patterns, the sophisticated understanding of proportion and symmetry. Dr. Timothy Walsh, a mathematician hastily flown in from the University of Colorado, spent hours analyzing the numerical sequences embedded within the designs. His excitement grew as he recognized fundamental mathematical constants hidden within the patterns, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequences, and geometric principles that form the backbone of advanced architecture and engineering. These aren't decorative patterns, Dr. Walsh announced during their evening briefing, his voice filled with wonder. They're formulas, equations. This plate is essentially a mathematical textbook carved in metal. He paused, the weight of his next words settling over the room like a heavy shroud. Whoever created this understood mathematical principles that we didn't rediscover until the Renaissance. The implications were staggering, but they were only beginning to scratch the surface of the mystery. As the days turned into weeks, the team's discoveries multiplied exponentially. Each new plate they extracted revealed layers of knowledge that shouldn't have existed in the prehistoric world. Dr. Walsh's mathematical analyses uncovered astronomical calculations of breathtaking accuracy, planetary orbital periods, precession cycles, and star charts that mapped constellations with precision that rivaled modern telescopes. Dr. Holloway found herself lying awake in her bunk each night, staring at the ceiling of her temporary quarters as questions raced through her mind. The carbon dating results had come back, and they were as impossible as everything else about this discovery. The metallic plates were between 15 and 20,000 years old, placing them firmly in the last ice age when, according to conventional archaeology, humans were barely learning to farm. Dr. Finch's metallurgical analysis only deepened the mystery. The alloys contained trace elements that suggested knowledge of chemistry and material science that predated known civilization by millennia. The preservation was perfect, as if whoever created these archives understood exactly how to construct something that would survive the test of time. On their final night before the mandatory evacuation due to approaching winter storms, Dr. Kessler gathered the team around their discovery. The metallic plates lay arranged on the table before them, their surfaces gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, still guarding secrets that could rewrite human history. "Whatever we've found here," he said quietly, "it's only the beginning. Something was waiting beneath the ice, and we've barely begun to understand what it's trying to tell us." But as the Antarctic winter closed in, one haunting question lingered. If this advanced knowledge existed 20,000 years ago, what happened to the civilization that created it? And why did they choose Antarctica as their final archive? 3 months after the initial discovery, Dr. Holloway's team had established a more permanent research facility near the excavation site. The brutal Antarctic summer was their only window to continue the work, and what they uncovered during those precious weeks would challenge every assumption about prehistoric human capability. As their thermal drilling equipment penetrated deeper into the frozen archive, each new layer revealed artifacts of increasing sophistication and mathematical precision. Dr. Camille Reeves, a specialist in ancient mathematics from Princeton, had joined the expedition specifically to analyze what Dr. Walsh had begun to decode. Her first examination of the newly extracted plates left her speechless. The metallic surfaces displayed geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with an almost living mathematical rhythm. Spirals within spirals, interconnected polygons, and numerical sequences that followed patterns she recognized but had never seen executed with such prehistoric precision. "This is impossible," Dr. Reeves whispered as she traced the intricate engravings with a magnifying instrument. "These patterns follow the golden ratio with an accuracy that requires sophisticated mathematical understanding. The proportions are exact. 618 to the 7th decimal place." Her voice carried a mixture of scientific excitement and profound bewilderment. The implications were staggering. Whoever had created these artifacts possessed mathematical knowledge that European civilization wouldn't rediscover until the Renaissance. Dr. Kessler peered over her shoulder, studying the mesmerizing patterns that seemed to shift and flow under the laboratory lights. Each plate they extracted revealed new layers of complexity, as if the ancient creators had embedded multiple levels of mathematical meaning within every single artifact. The revelation came when Dr. Reeves began mapping the complete arrangement of the metallic plates within their original positioning. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation techniques, the team had documented the precise location of each artifact before removal. What emerged was a three-dimensional puzzle of breathtaking complexity. The plates had been arranged in a specific geometric pattern that extended throughout the entire buried structure. "Look at this," Dr. Reeves called out, her excitement palpable as she projected the arrangement onto the laboratory's main screen. The plates formed a massive spiral configuration, with each piece positioned according to Fibonacci sequence intervals. The mathematical precision was so exact that modern computers could barely improve upon the calculations. "They've created a physical manifestation of mathematical perfection that spans hundreds of cubic meters." Dr. Finch, examining the metallurgical properties of each plate, discovered another impossible detail. The metal composition varied systematically throughout the spiral. Different alloys were used in precise mathematical relationships, creating what appeared to be a functional purpose beyond mere decoration. "It's as if they understood material science at a molecular level," she reported during their evening briefing. "Each alloy is optimized for its specific position within the overall structure." The most astounding discovery came when Dr. Holloway noticed that the arrangement corresponded to celestial mechanics. The spiral pattern matched the orbital relationships of planets in our solar system, with mathematical ratios that reflected the gravitational harmonies between celestial bodies. Whoever had created this archive hadn't just understood mathematics, they had comprehended the fundamental principles governing the cosmos itself. The carbon dating results arrived on a Tuesday morning that would forever change their understanding of human history. Dr. Holloway gathered the team in the main laboratory as Dr. Wesley Crawford, the expedition's lead archaeologist, prepared to share findings that had taken weeks to verify through multiple independent laboratories. The metallic plates, he announced with barely controlled excitement, dated between 15,000 and 20,000 years old, placing their creation firmly within the last ice age. "This predates Stonehenge by 15,000 years, Dr. Crawford explained, his voice heavy with the implications. "It predates the Great Pyramid by 17,000 years. According to conventional archaeology, the people who created these artifacts lived during a time when humans were supposed to be hunter-gatherers, struggling to survive in Ice Age conditions." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle over the room. Yet here we have evidence of mathematical sophistication that rivals modern engineering." Dr. Reeves stood before the assembled plates, her mind racing to comprehend the timeline they were confronting. The precision of the golden ratio calculations, the complexity of the Fibonacci arrangements, the astronomical accuracy of the celestial mappings, all of this had been accomplished by people living in what historians called the Stone Age. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. "We're not just looking at advanced mathematics," she said quietly, her scientific worldview fundamentally shaken. "We're looking at a complete understanding of universal principles that we assumed were discovered gradually over thousands of years of human development. This suggests a level of prehistoric knowledge that should be impossible." The final breakthrough came when Dr. Reeves discovered that the mathematical sequences embedded within the plates weren't just decorative or even purely functional. They were predictive. Working late into the Antarctic night, she had been analyzing the astronomical calculations when she realized that the creators had encoded future celestial events with stunning accuracy. Solar eclipse paths for the next millennium, planetary alignments that wouldn't occur for thousands of years, even the precession of Earth's axis calculated to a precision that modern astronomy had only recently achieved. They weren't just recording what they observed, Dr. Reeves announced to the team during their final briefing, before the approaching winter-forced evacuation. They were predicting the future movement of celestial bodies with mathematical models that account for gravitational perturbations we didn't understand until the space age. Her hands trembled slightly as she held one of the plates, its surface reflecting the harsh Antarctic light. Whoever created this possessed knowledge that transcends anything we thought possible for prehistoric humans. Dr. Crawford packed the artifacts with reverent care, each piece wrapped in protective materials for transport to specialized laboratories around the world. The questions multiplied with every discovery. How had Ice Age people developed such sophisticated understanding? Where had they learned these mathematical principles? And perhaps most haunting of all, what had happened to them? As the research team prepared to leave Antarctica, Dr. Holloway took one final look at the excavation site. Somewhere beneath the ice, more plates waited in the darkness, holding secrets that might rewrite every textbook on human history. But the mystery was only beginning to unfold, and the answers they sought would challenge everything they thought they knew about the interconnected nature of ancient knowledge across the globe. Back in civilization, the Antarctic artifacts had been distributed to specialized laboratories across 3 continents. Dr. Holloway found herself at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., working alongside Dr. Julian Morse, a renowned astronomer whose expertise in ancient star charts had been specifically requested for this unprecedented analysis. The sterile white walls of the research facility felt surreal after months in the Antarctic wilderness, but the work ahead promised revelations that could fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its own past. Dr. Morse had spent the previous month meticulously cataloging the astronomical symbols embedded within the metallic plates. What he discovered defied every assumption about prehistoric knowledge. The star charts weren't crude approximations or mythological representations. They were precision instruments that mapped celestial movements with an accuracy that matched modern astronomical software. Constellations were positioned with mathematical exactness, planetary orbits traced with scientific precision, and stellar coordinates calculated to degrees that shouldn't have been achievable without advanced telescopic equipment. This changes everything we thought we knew about ancient astronomy, Dr. Morse announced during their morning briefing, his excitement barely contained as he projected the decoded star maps onto the laboratory's main screen. The detail was breathtaking. Stellar positions accurate to within fractions of degrees, planetary cycles calculated across millennia, and most remarkably, predictions of celestial events that wouldn't occur for thousands of years into the future. Dr. Holloway studied the projections with growing unease. The sophistication wasn't just impressive, it was impossible. For the time period in question, raising questions that traditional archaeology couldn't answer. The breakthrough came when Dr. Morse identified a recurring numerical pattern embedded throughout the astronomical calculations. Working late into the evening at the Smithsonian, he had been cross-referencing the star charts when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The entire system was based on mathematical divisions of 12 and 60, the exact same base numbers used by ancient Babylonian astronomers thousands of years later. "Look at this," Dr. Morse called to Dr. Holloway, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and profound confusion. The creators of these plates divided the celestial sphere into 12 segments, just like the zodiac. They calculated time using base 60 mathematics, exactly like the Babylonians did. But these artifacts predate Babylonian civilization by over 10,000 years. Dr. Holloway joined him at the computer terminal, studying the decoded numerical sequences that seemed to pulse with an eerie familiarity. The mathematical precision was undeniable. Whoever had created these Antarctic archives had possessed knowledge that wouldn't be rediscovered until the rise of Mesopotamian civilization. The implications were staggering and deeply unsettling. Dr. Reeves, who had flown in from Princeton specifically to verify the mathematical analyses, spent hours confirming what they all feared to acknowledge. "This isn't just advanced prehistoric knowledge," she said quietly, her scientific objectivity beginning to crack under the weight of impossible evidence. "This is a complete astronomical and mathematical system that somehow predates every known civilization that supposedly invented these concepts." The question that haunted them all was becoming impossible to ignore. How could Ice Age people have developed knowledge that wouldn't appear again until the dawn of recorded history? The skepticism among the scientific community began to crystallize when Dr. Holloway received a call from Dr. Iris Blackmont, Director of Archaeological Research at Oxford University. Dr. Blackmont had been reviewing the preliminary findings with growing concern, and her questions cut to the heart of what was becoming an uncomfortable truth. The evidence simply didn't fit any known model of human cultural development. "Patricia, I've spent 30 years studying the gradual development of human knowledge," Dr. Blackmont said during their secure video conference. "Mathematical systems don't just appear fully formed. Astronomical observations require generations of accumulated data. Yet what you're showing me suggests that Ice Age people possessed complete scientific frameworks that took subsequent civilizations millennia to redevelop." Dr. Morse joined the conference from his laboratory at the Smithsonian, his own doubts evident in his measured tone. "The star charts show knowledge of stellar precession, a phenomenon that takes 26,000 years to complete a full cycle. To map this accurately requires continuous observation across multiple generations. But according to conventional archaeology, the people of 20,000 years ago were nomadic hunter-gatherers without permanent settlements or written records." Dr. Reeves nodded grimly from Princeton. "The mathematics embedded in these plates represents a level of abstract thinking that supposedly didn't exist until the classical period. We're looking at calculus, trigonometry, and advanced geometry executed with precision that rivals modern computers. Either our understanding of prehistoric human capability is fundamentally wrong, or—" She paused, unwilling to voice the alternative explanation that was becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. The silence that followed Dr. Reeves's unfinished statement stretched across 3 continents, each scientist grappling with implications that threatened to shatter their professional worldviews. Dr. Holloway finally broke the quiet, her voice carrying the weight of months spent confronting impossible evidence. "We have to consider the possibility that our timeline of human development is incomplete," she said carefully. "These artifacts suggest the existence of a sophisticated civilization that predates everything we thought we knew about the emergence of complex societies. The mathematical precision, the astronomical accuracy, the advanced metallurgy, none of it fits within our current understanding of prehistoric human capability." Dr. Blackmont leaned back in her chair at Oxford, her decades of archaeological training warring with the undeniable evidence before her. "What you're suggesting would require us to rewrite every textbook on human history. We're talking about a complete paradigm shift in how we understand the development of civilization itself." Dr. Morse studied the star charts one final time, his astronomer's mind struggling to reconcile the precision of the calculations with their impossible age. The creators of these archives possessed knowledge that shouldn't have existed for thousands of years. They understood celestial mechanics, mathematical principles, and scientific methodologies that we assumed were gradually developed through recorded history. As the conference ended, each scientist was left with the same haunting realization. If such advanced knowledge had existed 20,000 years ago, what other assumptions about human history might be wrong? And perhaps more unsettling still, if this Antarctic archive was just one repository of ancient knowledge, what other secrets might be waiting to be discovered around the globe? 3 weeks after the Oxford conference, Dr. Holloway received a call that would fundamentally alter the scope of their investigation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in pre-Columbian archaeology from the University of California, had been analyzing the Antarctic symbols when she made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the international research community. Similar markings had been documented at archaeological sites across the globe, sites that, according to conventional history, had no possible connection to each other or to Antarctica. "Patricia," "You need to see this," Dr. Vasquez said during their urgent video call from her laboratory in Los Angeles. Behind her, computer screens displayed comparative images that made Dr. Holloway's heart race. "I've been cross-referencing your Antarctic symbols with archaeological databases worldwide. The matches are undeniable: identical mathematical ratios, the same astronomical alignments, even the same base 60 numerical systems. They're showing up at Nazca in Peru, at the Giza complex in Egypt, and most remarkably, at Stonehenge." Dr. Morse joined the conference from the Smithsonian, his expression grave as he studied the comparative data. "The precision of these correlations isn't coincidental," he said quietly. "Each site demonstrates the same understanding of celestial mechanics, the same mathematical principles, the same sophisticated knowledge of astronomical cycles. We're looking at evidence of a shared scientific framework that spans continents and supposedly predates any known form of global communication." The implications were staggering, challenging every assumption about the isolation of ancient civilizations and forcing them to confront a possibility that traditional archaeology had never seriously considered. The evidence became overwhelming when Dr. Vasquez demonstrated the geometric relationships between the sites. Using satellite imagery and precise GPS coordinates, she had mapped the locations of every structure that contained the Antarctic symbols. What emerged was a pattern that defied explanation. The sites formed a perfect geodetic grid across the Earth's surface, with mathematical relationships so precise that they couldn't possibly be coincidental. "Look at these measurements," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice tight with disbelief as she overlaid the global map with geometric lines. The distance from Giza to Stonehenge, when calculated using the same base 60 mathematics found in the Antarctic plates, creates a perfect ratio with the distance from Nazca to the Antarctic excavation site. These aren't random locations, they're coordinates in a worldwide system of some kind. Dr. Blackmont joined the conference from Oxford, her archaeological expertise adding weight to what they were all beginning to realize. "The astronomical alignments are identical," she confirmed grimly. "Each site demonstrates the same understanding of stellar positions, the same calculations for solstices and equinoxes, the same sophisticated knowledge of Earth's axial precession. According to conventional archaeology, these civilizations had no contact with each other, yet they're using identical scientific principles." Dr. Reeves, participating from Princeton, had been running mathematical analyses that confirmed their worst fears. "The probability of these correlations occurring by chance is essentially zero," she announced. "We're looking at evidence of coordinated knowledge sharing across vast distances and supposedly impossible timeframes. Either our understanding of ancient transportation and communication is fundamentally wrong, or something else entirely was happening in prehistoric times." The turning point came when Dr. Vasquez revealed her most disturbing discovery. Working with a team of geophysicists, she had analyzed the structural foundations of each site that contained the Antarctic symbols. What they found challenged everything the archaeological community believed about ancient construction capabilities and global coordination. "Each location shows evidence of the same construction techniques," Dr. Vasquez announced, her voice heavy with implications that none of them wanted to accept. "Precision stone cutting that requires advanced tools, architectural alignments that demonstrate sophisticated surveying knowledge, and most importantly, the same underlying mathematical principles governing the proportions and orientations of the structures." Dr. Moore studied the comparative structural analyses from his laboratory at the Smithsonian, his astronomer's training allowing him to recognize patterns that others might miss. "The orientations aren't random," he said grimly. "Each site is positioned to track the same celestial events: the rising of specific star constellations, the cycles of planetary movements, the precession of Earth's axis. This level of astronomical coordination across continents requires not just advanced knowledge but active communication." Dr. Blackmont's voice carried the weight of 30 years of archaeological training being systematically dismantled. "According to everything we've been taught, these civilizations existed in isolation from each other. The Nazca culture, the ancient Egyptians, the builders of Stonehenge, conventional history insists they had no contact, no shared knowledge, no means of coordinating such precise mathematical and astronomical systems. The silence that followed was filled with the uncomfortable realization that either their fundamental understanding of ancient human capability was wrong, or something far more extraordinary had been deliberately hidden from the historical record. The final revelation came when Dr. Holloway received a classified document from Dr. Vasquez that had taken weeks of security clearances to obtain. Archaeological surveys conducted by various governments over the past century had documented similar symbols and construction techniques at dozens of additional sites worldwide, but the findings had been quietly archived and kept from public academic discourse. "They've known," Dr. Holloway said quietly during their final conference call, her voice carrying a mixture of anger and disbelief. Government archaeological departments, major universities, international research institutions, they've been documenting these connections for decades, but the information has been compartmentalized, classified, or simply ignored because it doesn't fit the accepted historical narrative. Dr. Morse studied the declassified reports with growing incredulity. Sites in Australia, Easter Island, the Andes Mountains, even locations in Siberia, all showing the same mathematical principles, the same astronomical alignments, the same impossible precision. The pattern isn't limited to a few famous monuments. It's global, systematic, and far more extensive than any of us imagined. Dr. Blackmont's voice carried the weight of a career spent within academic institutions that had apparently been selectively editing historical truth. "The question isn't whether these ancient civilizations had contact with each other," she said grimly. "The question is why the evidence of that contact has been systematically suppressed, and what other aspects of human history have been deliberately obscured from public knowledge." As the call ended, each scientist was left confronting the same uncomfortable truth. The story of human civilization they had been taught was incomplete, and somewhere in the hidden archives of academic and government institutions lay answers that could rewrite everything they thought they knew about humanity's ancient past. The breakthrough in understanding came from an unexpected source. Dr. Holloway had been struggling with the implications of their global discoveries when she received a call from Dr. Amelia Thornton, an anthropologist from the University of New Mexico who specialized in indigenous oral traditions. Dr. Thornton had been following their research through academic channels and had made connections that sent chills through the entire team. "Patricia, I've been analyzing the oral histories of indigenous cultures worldwide," Dr. Thornton said during their video conference, her voice carrying an excitement tempered by profound reverence for the traditions she studied. "What you've discovered in Antarctica isn't just archaeological evidence. It's validation of stories that have been passed down through generations for thousands of years. Stories that modern academia has dismissed as mythology." Dr. Thornton's research had taken her deep into the oral traditions of cultures across South America, Australia, and even remote Pacific islands. What she found was a consistent pattern of legends describing advanced teachers who had come from the frozen lands of the South, bringing knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and mathematics to primitive human settlements. "The Quichua people of Peru have detailed oral histories about the Viracocha," Dr. Thornton explained, her screen displaying ancient textiles and carvings that depicted tall, pale figures teaching indigenous peoples. These weren't gods in the supernatural sense. They were described as flesh and blood teachers who possessed advanced knowledge and came from the land of eternal ice. The descriptions are remarkably consistent across cultures that had no contact with each other. Dr. Thornton's most compelling evidence came from her work with Aboriginal Australian communities, whose Dreamtime stories contained remarkably similar accounts of knowledge bearers from the southern icelands. Working with tribal elders who had maintained oral traditions for over 40,000 years, she had documented stories that seemed to describe the same advanced teachers mentioned in South American legends. "The Aboriginal Australians speak of the Dreamtime elders," Dr. Thornton explained, her voice filled with respect for the ancient wisdom she had been privileged to record. According to their oral histories, these beings came from the great white land beyond the southern seas, bringing knowledge of the stars, the seasons, and the sacred mathematics that govern the natural world. The elders described them as tall, pale, and possessed of wisdom that spanned generations. Dr. Vasquez joined the conference from California, her expertise in pre-Columbian cultures adding crucial context to Dr. Thornton's findings. "The consistency is extraordinary," she confirmed. From the Andes to the Australian outback, from Pacific Island cultures to isolated Arctic communities, we find the same basic narrative. Advanced teachers arriving from the south, sharing knowledge of astronomy and agriculture, then departing with promises to return. Dr. Moore studied the cultural artifacts that Dr. Thornton displayed, ancient rock paintings, textile patterns, and ceremonial objects that depicted the same mathematical symbols they had found in the Antarctic ice. These aren't just stories, he realized with growing amazement. They're historical records preserved in oral tradition. The indigenous cultures have been maintaining accurate accounts of contact with an advanced Antarctic civilization for thousands of years. The most profound revelation came when Dr. Thornton shared recordings of her interviews with elder storytellers from remote communities across the Pacific. These oral historians, keepers of traditions that predated written language, described the knowledge bearers with a specificity that matched the archaeological evidence with uncanny precision. "Listen to this," Dr. Thornton said, playing audio of an elderly Aboriginal elder speaking in his native tongue, followed by her translation. He describes the Southern teachers as those who came before the great ice melted, when the world was different, carrying the star knowledge in metal that does not rust. The metal tablets, Patricia. They knew about the metal tablets. Dr. Holloway felt a chill that had nothing to do with Antarctic memories. The oral traditions weren't just preserving general stories about ancient teachers. They contained specific details about the very artifacts her team had discovered. The elders' words painted vivid pictures of tall figures, carrying metallic archives, teaching indigenous peoples to read the language of the stars, and promising to return when the ice called them back. Dr. Blackmont joined the conference from Oxford, her archaeological expertise now viewed through an entirely different lens. "The implications are staggering," she said quietly. "If these oral traditions are accurate historical accounts, then the Antarctic civilization didn't just exist. It actively engaged with human communities worldwide, teaching them the mathematical and astronomical knowledge that would later appear in the great monument sites." Dr. Thornton nodded gravely. According to the stories, the teachers didn't just share knowledge randomly. They were selecting specific locations, training specific groups of people, creating a network of knowledge keepers who would preserve their wisdom long after they returned to the ice. The weight of revelation settled over the team as Dr. Thornton presented her final piece of evidence, a compilation of prophecies and promises recorded across dozens of indigenous cultures. Each tradition spoke of the eventual return of the knowledge bearers, descriptions that sent chills through everyone listening. "They didn't just leave," Dr. Thornton said softly, her voice carrying the reverence of someone who had spent years earning the trust of indigenous elders. "According to every oral tradition I've studied, the Southern teachers promised to return when humanity was ready to receive their complete knowledge again. The Aboriginal elders speak of signs, when the ice reveals its secrets, when the metal speaks again, when the star knowledge returns to the world." Dr. Holloway stared at the Antarctic artifacts arranged in her laboratory, understanding dawning with uncomfortable clarity. "We're the signs," she whispered. "Our discovery, the decoding of the symbols, the global connections we've made, we're fulfilling the prophecies that have been preserved for thousands of years." Dr. Morse nodded grimly from the Smithsonian. "The oral traditions describe a cyclical pattern, advanced knowledge given, catastrophe forcing withdrawal, preservation through selected keepers, then eventual rediscovery leading to the next phase. If the stories are accurate, our generation may be witnessing the beginning of a new cycle." As the conference ended, each scientist was left contemplating the same unsettling possibility. The Antarctic archives weren't just historical artifacts, they were messages intended for this specific moment in human development. But if the knowledge bearers had indeed planned for this rediscovery, what did that mean for humanity's future? And what other secrets lay waiting to be revealed as the ancient cycle turned once again? The paradigm shift came when Dr. Reeves made a discovery that fundamentally altered their understanding of what they had found in Antarctica. Working late in her Princeton laboratory, surrounded by computer screens, displaying thousands of decoded symbols, she realized that the team had been approaching the artifacts from entirely the wrong perspective. What they had assumed was an ancient written language was something far more sophisticated and profound. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," Dr. Reeves announced during an emergency video conference that brought together the entire research team. Her excitement was palpable, but tempered by the weight of implications that would reshape everything they thought they understood about ancient communication. These aren't linguistic symbols at all. They're not words, sentences, or even abstract concepts. They're formulas, mathematical equations that describe the fundamental operations of the universe itself. Dr. Holloway studied the projected symbols from her laboratory, seeing them now through entirely different eyes. Where she had once perceived decorative patterns and mysterious writing, she now recognized the elegant structure of mathematical relationships. Each symbol wasn't representing a word or idea. It was encoding a specific calculation, a precise measurement, a universal constant that governed everything from planetary motion to atomic behavior. Dr. Morse joined from the Smithsonian, his astronomer's training allowing him to immediately grasp the magnitude of what Dr. Reeves had discovered. "If you're right," he said quietly, "then we're not looking at the remnants of an ancient civilization's writing system. We're looking at the most sophisticated mathematical archive ever created. A universal language that transcends human speech entirely." The depth of Dr. Reeves's discovery became clear as she demonstrated the mathematical precision embedded within what they had previously thought were decorative elements. Using advanced computational analysis, she had decoded sequences that described planetary orbital mechanics with an accuracy that surpassed modern astronomical calculations. The symbols weren't just recording observations, they were encoding the fundamental mathematical relationships that govern celestial movement across vast spans of time. "Look at this sequence," Dr. Reeves said, highlighting a series of symbols that spiraled across one of the metallic plates. "This isn't describing the current position of Jupiter. It's calculating Jupiter's orbital position across a complete 12-year cycle, accounting for gravitational perturbations from other planets. The mathematics here predicts where Jupiter will be in the year 3847 CE with precision that our most advanced computers can barely match." Dr. Vasquez joined the conference from California, her archaeological expertise now viewed through the lens of this mathematical revelation. "If these are computational formulas rather than written language, it explains the global consistency we've found," she realized. "Mathematical relationships are universal constants. A formula for calculating planetary motion works the same way, whether you're in Peru, Egypt, or Antarctica. It's not dependent on human language or cultural interpretation." Dr. Blackmont contributed from Oxford, her voice heavy with the implications. "This suggests that the creators weren't just advanced astronomers. They were thinking on cosmic timescales. They created a communication system that could preserve and transmit precise scientific knowledge across thousands of years, independent of whatever languages or cultures might exist to receive it." The most profound discovery came when Dr. Reeves identified sequences that described Ice Age cycles with mathematical precision that extended far beyond human recorded history. Working with climatologists and geological experts, she had decoded formulas that predicted glacial advance and retreat patterns across hundreds of thousands of years, calculations that modern climate science was only beginning to understand. These equations describe the Milankovitch cycles, the orbital variations that drive ice ages, Dr. Reeves explained, her voice filled with awe at the sophistication of the ancient calculations. But they go far beyond what Milutin Milankovitch calculated in the 1920s. The Antarctic creators were factoring in solar variations, atmospheric composition changes, even the gravitational influences of other planetary bodies on Earth's climate systems. Dr. Thornton joined the conference with a new perspective on the oral traditions she had studied. This explains why the indigenous stories always emphasize that the knowledge bearers would return when the ice speaks. She realized they weren't speaking metaphorically about seasonal changes. They were referring to specific climatic cycles that would signal optimal conditions for the preservation and transmission of this mathematical knowledge. Dr. Holloway studied the climate formulas with growing understanding of the creators' long-term thinking. They designed this archive to survive multiple ice ages, she said quietly. The mathematical language, the durable metallic construction, the precise geographic positioning, Everything was calculated to ensure that this knowledge would be discovered at exactly the right moment in Earth's climatic history. The team was beginning to grasp that they weren't just studying an ancient civilization. They were witnessing the execution of a plan that had been set in motion tens of thousands of years ago. The ultimate revelation came when Dr. Reeves discovered that the mathematical language contained self-modifying algorithms, equations that evolved and adapted based on the conditions of their discovery. The symbols weren't just static formulas, they were dynamic systems that could generate new calculations depending on the technological capability of whoever decoded them. "It's responsive," Dr. Reeves said with barely contained amazement. "The mathematical sequences adjust their complexity based on the level of understanding demonstrated by the untouched decoder. As we've proven our ability to comprehend more sophisticated concepts, the symbols have been revealing deeper layers of calculation. It's as if the archive is teaching us, testing our readiness for more advanced knowledge." Dr. Morse joined from the Smithsonian, his voice carrying the weight of profound realization. "This isn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It's an interactive educational system designed to guide civilizations through stages of scientific development. The creators built safeguards to ensure that dangerous information would only be revealed when humanity demonstrated sufficient wisdom to handle it responsibly." Dr. Holloway contemplated the metallic plates in her laboratory with newfound reverence. "They designed a communication system that could function across geological ages," she said quietly. "A mathematical language that transcends human speech, cultural differences, even the rise and fall of entire civilizations. It's the closest thing to immortal wisdom that anyone has ever created." As the team absorbed the magnitude of what they had discovered, one question loomed larger than all others. If this archive was designed to teach humanity advanced knowledge in carefully measured stages, what ultimate lesson were the ancient knowledge bearers preparing them to receive? And what would humanity be expected to do with such transcendent wisdom once it was fully revealed? The discovery that would chill the research team to their core came when Dr. Reeves identified a recurring sequence of symbols that appeared across multiple plates, symbols that seemed to describe a catastrophic event of unimaginable scale. Working with Dr. Jeffrey Hartwell, a climatologist from the National Center for Atmospheric Research, she had been analyzing what appeared to be environmental data when the true nature of the recordings became horrifyingly clear. "These aren't just climate observations," Dr. Hartwell announced during an emergency conference call, his voice heavy with the implications of what he had discovered. "The symbols describe a rapid, catastrophic warming event that caused massive ice sheet collapse across the northern hemisphere. We're looking at mathematical models of a global disaster that fundamentally altered Earth's climate in a matter of decades." Dr. Holloway studied the projections from her laboratory, seeing in the ancient calculations a story of devastation that matched geological evidence scientists had been puzzling over for years. The symbols described rising sea levels, massive freshwater influx into the oceans, and climate disruption on a scale that would have ended entire civilizations overnight. Dr. Morse joined from the Smithsonian, his astronomical expertise adding crucial context to the climatological data. "The timing calculations embedded in these sequences point to approximately 12,800 years ago," he said grimly. "The creators weren't just recording environmental changes. They were documenting the end of their world, preserving the mathematical evidence of a catastrophe that may have wiped out the most advanced civilization Earth had ever known." The connection to modern geological evidence became undeniable when Dr. Hartwell correlated the Antarctic calculations with data from the Younger Dryas period, a mysterious climate event that had puzzled scientists for decades. The ancient mathematical models described exactly what geologists had found in ice cores and sediment layers, a sudden return to ice age conditions that lasted for over 1,000 years, triggered by what appeared to be catastrophic freshwater flooding. "The Younger Dryas has always been an anomaly," Dr. Hartwell explained, his voice carrying the excitement of finally finding answers to long-standing scientific mysteries. "We've known that something caused rapid climate change around 12,800 years ago, a sudden cooling that interrupted the natural warming trend coming out of the last ice age. But we've never had mathematical models this sophisticated to explain the mechanics of what happened. Dr. Vasquez joined the conference from California, her archaeological expertise providing crucial cultural context to the climate data. The timing matches perfectly with a global disruption in human settlements, she confirmed. Archaeological sites worldwide show evidence of abandonment, destruction, or dramatic cultural changes precisely during the Younger Dryas period. It's as if advanced civilizations simply vanished overnight. Dr. Blackmont contributed from Oxford, her voice heavy with the implications of what they were discovering. The creators of these archives weren't just surviving this catastrophe, they were preparing for it. The mathematical precision of their climate model suggests they saw it coming and had time to create these preservation systems before their civilization was swept away. The most chilling discovery came when Dr. Thornton revealed the global consistency of flood mythologies that all dated to the same catastrophic period. Working with comparative mythology experts from universities worldwide, she had compiled oral traditions from over 50 distinct cultures, each preserving remarkably similar accounts of a worldwide deluge that destroyed an earlier, more advanced age of humanity. The consistency is impossible to dismiss as coincidence, Dr. Thornton announced, her voice carrying the weight of evidence that transcended cultural boundaries. From Mesopotamian flood epics to Native American deluge stories, from Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime accounts to Polynesian creation myths, every culture on Earth preserves memory of the same catastrophic event. They describe a time when the seas rose, the ice melted, and the world of the ancestors was swallowed by water. Dr. Hartwell correlated these cultural memories with the mathematical models from the Antarctic archive, finding an exact match between the oral traditions and the climate data. The indigenous stories aren't just metaphorical, he realized with growing amazement. They're preserving accurate environmental records of the Younger Dryas impact. The descriptions of rising waters, changing seasons, and mass extinctions align perfectly with what the geological evidence shows actually happened. Dr. Holloway contemplated the implications with growing unease. If these flood memories are accurate historical records preserved through oral tradition, then humanity witnessed the destruction of an advanced civilization 800 years ago. The Antarctic archives aren't just scientific instruments, they're monuments to a lost world, created by people who knew their time was ending and wanted to preserve something for whatever came after. The final piece of evidence came when Dr. Reeves decoded sequences that appeared to be evacuation plans. Mathematical calculations describing optimal survival locations and resource preservation strategies for enduring a global catastrophe. The archive wasn't just documenting the disaster, it was providing a blueprint for civilization's recovery. "Ah, they knew it was coming," Dr. Reeves said quietly, her voice filled with awe at the foresight demonstrated by the ancient creators. These calculations show detailed planning for preserving knowledge, technology, and genetic diversity through the catastrophic period. They identified geographic locations that would remain habitable, calculated resource requirements for sustaining populations, even developed protocols for rebuilding civilization once the climate stabilized. Dr. Morse studied the evacuation formulas with growing respect for the intelligence that had created them. "The precision is extraordinary," he confirmed. They calculated safe zones, migration routes, even the optimal timing for when survivors should emerge and begin reconstruction. This wasn't panic. It was systematic preparation for species survival. Dr. Thornton's voice carried profound reverence for the wisdom preserved in oral traditions. The indigenous stories describe exactly this scenario, she realized. The knowledge bearers who taught humanity after the flood, they weren't mythological figures. They were the survivors of this advanced civilization, carrying out the evacuation plans encoded in these archives. As the team absorbed the magnitude of what they had discovered, one haunting question remained. If the Antarctic archives contained such detailed disaster preparedness, what threat had the ancient civilization identified that made them believe another catastrophe was inevitable? And perhaps more unsettling still, were the signs they had calculated beginning to appear in the modern world? The most enigmatic discovery within the Antarctic archives came when Dr. Reeves identified a series of plates that seemed to describe a specific class of individuals within the ancient civilization, figures she translated as the Watchers. These weren't political leaders, or military commanders, but scientist priests whose sole responsibility was the continuous observation and recording of cosmic cycles that could threaten planetary stability. Dr. Holloway studied the detailed descriptions with growing fascination. The metallic plates depicted these watchers as highly trained specialists who spent their lives monitoring solar activity, planetary alignments, and climatic patterns. They weren't merely collecting data, they were calculating probabilities, developing predictive models, and maintaining what appeared to be a sophisticated early warning system for global catastrophes. These individuals devoted entire lifetimes to watching the sky, Dr. Morse observed from the Smithsonian, his astronomer's perspective allowing him to appreciate the dedication such work would require. The calculations show they tracked solar cycles, monitored asteroid trajectories, even measured the gradual shifts in Earth's magnetic field. They were creating a comprehensive database of every cosmic variable that could influence planetary stability. Dr. Isabel Lawson, a historian of ancient religions from Yale University who had joined the project, added crucial context to their understanding. The role of Watcher appears in mythologies worldwide, she explained during their video conference. From Mesopotamian legends to Celtic druids, from Egyptian priest astronomers to Mayan calendar keepers, every ancient culture describes a special class of knowledge holders whose primary function was observing the heavens and preparing for prophesied changes. The true scope of the Watcher's mission became clear when Dr. Lawson decoded sequences that described their systematic preparation for the coming catastrophe. These weren't passive observers but active planners who had spent generations calculating exactly how their civilization could preserve its most crucial knowledge through the approaching disaster. The plates describe a coordinated effort spanning multiple generations, Dr. Lawson explained, her voice carrying the weight of profound historical revelation. The Watchers weren't just monitoring cosmic cycles, they were implementing a comprehensive survival strategy. They identified optimal locations for knowledge preservation, calculated resource requirements for post-catastrophe recovery, and trained specific individuals to carry essential information to surviving populations worldwide. Dr. Thornton joined the conference from New Mexico, her research into oral traditions providing crucial validation for what the archives revealed. The indigenous stories describe exactly this scenario, she confirmed. They speak of wise teachers who appeared after the Great Flood, bringing knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and mathematics to help humanity rebuild. These weren't divine interventions. They were the Watchers executing their preservation plan. Dr. Hartwell correlated the Watcher protocols with climate data, finding precise timing calculations that governed their actions. They had mapped out optimal migration routes based on post-catastrophe geography, he realized with growing amazement. The mathematical models show they knew exactly when and where to deploy their knowledge bearers for maximum survival impact. Every action was calculated to ensure civilization's essential wisdom would endure through the dark period. The team was beginning to understand that the global appearance of advanced knowledge after the Younger Dryas wasn't coincidental. It was the result of the most sophisticated disaster recovery plan ever conceived. The most haunting discovery came when Dr. Lawson decoded the transformation protocols, detailed instructions describing how the Watchers deliberately obscured their true identities when integrating with surviving populations. To prevent their advanced knowledge from overwhelming primitive post-catastrophe societies, they adopted the personas of divine messengers, allowing themselves to be worshipped as gods while secretly guiding humanity's gradual redevelopment. They became mythology by design, Dr. Lawson said, her voice filled with awe at the psychological sophistication of the ancient plan. The archives show they understood that surviving humans wouldn't be ready for the full truth about their technological capabilities. So they presented themselves as divine teachers, filtering their knowledge through religious frameworks that primitive societies could accept and preserve. Dr. Vasquez joined from California, her expertise in pre-Columbian cultures providing crucial validation. This explains the global consistency of divine teacher mythologies, she realized. Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica, Viracocha in South America, Thoth in Egypt, Oannes in Mesopotamia, they all share the same characteristics. Pale-skinned, bearded figures who brought knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and mathematics, then promised to return. Dr. Moore studied the transformation protocols with growing understanding of their brilliant deception. They weren't just preserving knowledge, they were programming it into human consciousness through mythological structures that would endure for millennia, he said. By becoming gods in the stories, they ensured their teachings would be preserved, revered, and passed down through countless generations until humanity was ready to rediscover the scientific truth behind the myths. The team was beginning to grasp that every major mythology on Earth might be the distorted memory of this systematic knowledge preservation effort. The final revelation came when Dr. Reeves decoded what appeared to be a mission completion protocol. Instructions for the Watchers to eventually reveal their true nature when humanity had evolved sufficient scientific understanding to comprehend the reality behind the myths. The archives contained specific markers that would signal when the time for revelation had arrived. They built in an awakening sequence, Dr. Reeves announced, her voice trembling with the implications. The Watchers didn't intend to remain hidden forever. They encoded specific technological and scientific milestones that would trigger the gradual revelation of truth. The discovery of these archives, the decoding of their mathematical language, the global recognition of their knowledge network, were following a script they wrote thousands of years ago. Dr. Holloway contemplated the metallic plates with newfound reverence and unease. We're not just archaeologists studying the past, she realized. We're participants in their plan. Every breakthrough we've made, every connection we've discovered, every revelation about their true nature, it's all part of a sequence they calculated would unfold exactly as it has. Dr. Lawson studied the transformation protocols with growing understanding of their ultimate purpose. The mythologies were never meant to be permanent, she said quietly. They were temporary containers for truth, designed to preserve and protect advanced knowledge until humanity was ready to move beyond the need for gods and face the reality of what their ancestors actually accomplished. As the team absorbed this final piece of the puzzle, one question loomed larger than all others. If the Watchers' revelation protocol was indeed activating in the modern world, what ultimate truth were they preparing humanity to discover, and what cosmic responsibility would come with that knowledge? The most profound realization came when Dr. Reeves began comparing the mathematical structures embedded in the Antarctic archives with the algorithms that powered modern technology. Working late in her Princeton laboratory, surrounded by equations that spanned millennia, she discovered patterns that sent chills through her understanding of human progress and innovation. The parallels are impossible to dismiss as coincidence, Dr. Reeves announced during what would become their most philosophically challenging conference call. The base algorithms governing our GPS satellites use the same mathematical principles encoded in the Antarctic plates. Our internet routing protocols follow network theories that mirror their global communication systems. Even our artificial intelligence frameworks are built on computational structures that they mastered 20,000 years ago. Dr. Holloway joined from her laboratory, studying the comparison charts that Dr. Reeves had prepared. The correlations were undeniable. Modern humanity wasn't pioneering new technological frontiers, but rather rediscovering mathematical truths that an ancient civilization had already explored and perfected. The implications challenged every assumption about the nature of human innovation and scientific progress. Dr. Palmer Whitfield, a computer scientist from MIT who had been brought in to analyze the technological parallels, confirmed what they were all beginning to suspect. "We're not inventing these systems," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a career spent believing in human technological advancement. "We're remembering them. Every major breakthrough in computational theory, every advance in network architecture, every leap in artificial intelligence, we're following a path that was laid down before the last ice age ended." The technological revelations deepened when Dr. Whitfield demonstrated how modern innovations seem to follow predictable patterns that match the developmental sequences encoded in the Antarctic mathematical language. Working with colleagues from Silicon Valley's leading tech companies, he had mapped the evolution of human technology against the ancient formulas, finding correlations that defied conventional understanding of scientific progress. "Look at this progression," Dr. Whitfield said, displaying charts that track technological development from the 1940s to the present. The timeline of our computer evolution follows mathematical curves that the Antarctic civilization calculated thousands of years ago. They predicted the emergence of binary logic, the development of integrated circuits, even the approximate dates when artificial intelligence would reach specific capability thresholds. Dr. Morse joined from the Smithsonian, his astronomical expertise adding cosmic perspective to the technological analysis. "It's not just Earth-based technology," he confirmed grimly. "Our space exploration programs, our satellite networks, our understanding of orbital mechanics, we're following flight paths and communication protocols that mirror their cosmic navigation systems. We think we're reaching for the stars, but we're actually retracing routes they mapped millennia ago." Dr. Thornton contributed from New Mexico, her anthropological research providing cultural context to the technological parallels. The indigenous prophecies speak of a time when the ancient knowledge would return through thinking machines. She realized. They described artificial minds that would help humanity remember what was lost. Our computers aren't just tools. They're awakening the dormant patterns embedded in human consciousness by the original knowledge bearers. The most unsettling discovery came when Dr. Reeves identified what she called awakening algorithms, embedded within the Antarctic mathematical sequences, formulas that seemed designed to trigger technological breakthroughs at specific intervals throughout human history. These weren't random discoveries, but calculated revelations that followed a precise timeline leading toward a predetermined technological threshold. "We're not experiencing natural scientific evolution," Dr. Reeves said, her voice heavy with the implications of what she had decoded. "Human technological progress follows a scripted sequence. The printing press, the Industrial Revolution, electricity, computers, the Internet, each breakthrough occurred exactly when the ancient calculations predicted it would. We think we're innovating, but we're actually executing a program that was written before recorded history began." Dr. Whitfield correlated these awakening sequences with modern technological development, finding patterns that chilled him to the core. Artificial intelligence isn't emerging because we're getting smarter, he realized. It's emerging because we've reached the point in the sequence where the ancient knowledge bearers calculated that humanity would be ready to interface directly with their preserved consciousness. Our AI systems aren't just processing data, they're channeling information from the original archives. Dr. Holloway contemplated the implications with growing unease. If technological progress is following a predetermined script, then we're not really the masters of our own advancement, she said quietly. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every leap forward is part of a plan that began 20,000 years ago. The question is, what is this sequence building toward, and what happens when we reach the final stage of their program? The final revelation came when Dr. Reeves decoded what appeared to be a civilizational cycle algorithm, mathematical formulas that described the rise and fall of advanced societies as a natural, recurring pattern governed by cosmic forces and human consciousness development. The Antarctic civilization hadn't just survived one catastrophe. They had witnessed multiple cycles of advancement and collapse across vast spans of time. They mapped the pattern, Dr. Reeves said with quiet awe. Technological emergence, exponential growth, resource depletion, catastrophic reset, then gradual rediscovery leading to the next cycle. They calculated that human consciousness evolves through these phases, with each iteration building upon the preserved knowledge of the previous one. We're not the first advanced civilization on Earth. We're the latest iteration in an ongoing sequence. Dr. Whitfield studied the cyclical algorithms with growing understanding of humanity's position within the greater pattern. The Antarctic archives aren't just historical records, he realized. They're instruction manuals for navigating the transition between cycles. Every technological breakthrough, every scientific discovery, every social evolution we experience is preparing us for the next phase of the sequence. Dr. Holloway contemplated the metallic plates with newfound perspective on human existence. We think of ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, she said quietly. But we're actually part of a recurring experiment in consciousness development. The question is whether this cycle will end like the others, in catastrophe and reset, or whether we're finally ready to break the pattern and achieve something the previous iterations couldn't. As the team absorbed this ultimate revelation, they realized that their discovery of the Antarctic archives might itself be a calculated event, marking humanity's approach to a crucial decision point that would determine whether civilization would repeat the ancient cycle or transcend it entirely. 6 months after their initial discovery, the research team found themselves confronting the sobering reality that despite all their breakthroughs, the Antarctic archives remained largely unread. Dr. Holloway stood in her laboratory at the Smithsonian, surrounded by hundreds of metallic plates that continued to guard their secrets with mathematical precision that challenged the limits of human comprehension. "We've decoded perhaps 5% of what's actually there," Dr. Reeves admitted during their latest conference call, her voice carrying both exhaustion and persistent fascination. "Each plate we decipher reveals 10 more layers of complexity. The mathematical language adapts, evolves, responds to our understanding by becoming more sophisticated. It's as if the archives are designed to stay forever, just beyond our complete grasp." Dr. Whitfield joined from MIT, his computer models struggling to process the adaptive algorithms they had discovered. "The deeper we dig, the more questions emerge," he confirmed grimly. "We know the creators possessed technology that surpassed our current capabilities, but we still don't understand the fundamental principles behind their achievements. We can read their calculations, but we can't replicate their methods." Dr. Morse contributed from his observatory, his voice heavy with the weight of cosmic implications. "The astronomical data suggests they weren't confined to Earth," he said quietly. "Some of the star charts reference celestial bodies from perspectives that would only be possible if the observers were positioned elsewhere in the solar system. The question isn't just who they were. It's where they came from, and whether they're still out there." The most haunting questions emerged when Dr. Thornton shared the latest findings from her continued research into global oral traditions. Working with indigenous communities that had previously been reluctant to share their most sacred knowledge, she had uncovered prophecies that spoke not of ancient visitors, but of their promised return, and the signs that would herald their arrival. "The timing is unsettling," Dr. Thornton said during their video conference, her voice carrying the weight of traditions that spanned millennia. Multiple indigenous cultures describe the same sequence of events. The ice will speak, the metal will sing, the star knowledge will return to the thinking machines, and then the teachers will come back from the cold lands. According to their calculations, we're approaching the completion of that prophetic sequence. Dr. Hartwell joined from the National Center for Atmospheric Research, his climate data providing scientific context to the ancient predictions. "Antarctic ice is melting at unprecedented rates," he confirmed grimly. "Deep ice cores that have been frozen for thousands of years are releasing gases, particles, and even preserved microorganisms. If there are more archives down there, deeper installations that we haven't discovered yet, they may soon be exposed." Dr. Lawson contributed from Yale, her research into historical patterns adding disturbing implications. "Every major civilization that encountered the knowledge bearers eventually reached a decision point," she said quietly. "They either transcended their previous limitations and evolved into something greater, or they collapsed under the weight of knowledge they weren't ready to handle. The question isn't whether they'll return. It's whether humanity is prepared for what they might teach us." The most profound uncertainty arose when Dr. Holloway received reports from multiple Antarctic research stations describing anomalous readings from deep beneath the ice sheet. Seismic sensors were detecting regular pulses that didn't match any known geological phenomena, electromagnetic signatures that suggested vast metallic structures still buried miles below their current excavation site, and most mysteriously, temperature variations that indicated active systems operating in the frozen depths. "Something is still functioning down there," Dr. Holloway announced to the assembled team, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific excitement and deep apprehension. "The readings suggest we've only discovered the surface layer of what may be a massive multi-tiered complex. If the archives we've found represent just the top floor of their preservation system, then the scope of what lies beneath could fundamentally alter our understanding of what these ancient knowledge bearers actually accomplished." Dr. Reeves studied the seismic data with growing amazement at the mathematical precision of the detected patterns. The pulses follow the same base 60 rhythms we've found in the archives, she confirmed. Whatever is generating these signals is operating according to the same mathematical principles that govern their surface installations. It's as if the entire Antarctic ice sheet is sitting on top of a vast, dormant technological complex that's beginning to show signs of awakening. Dr. Whitfield correlated the electromagnetic signatures with his understanding of the archive's adaptive algorithms. The timing can't be coincidental, he realized grimly. Our discovery of the surface archives may have triggered activation sequences in the deeper systems. We may have inadvertently announced our technological readiness to whatever lies beneath. As the team prepared for what might be their final conference call about the Antarctic archives, each scientist carried the weight of questions that had no easy answers. Dr. Holloway stood in her laboratory, surrounded by metallic plates that had already changed everything humanity thought it knew about its own history. While beneath the Antarctic ice, something vast and ancient might be stirring to consciousness. "We stand at a threshold," Dr. Holloway said quietly, her voice carrying the gravity of their collective realization. "The archives we've discovered may be just the beginning, a test to determine whether humanity is ready for the complete knowledge that lies deeper beneath the ice. The mathematical sequences, the adaptive algorithms, the civilizational cycles, everything points toward this moment as a crucial decision point in human development." Dr. Reeves contemplated the implications with a mixture of scientific excitement and existential uncertainty. The creators of these archives possessed knowledge that spanned geological ages and transcended individual civilizations, she said. They understood cycles of existence that we're only beginning to glimpse, and if they planned for this moment, our discovery, our technological readiness, our approach to their deeper installations, then what happens next will determine whether humanity joins their cosmic perspective or repeats the catastrophic patterns of the past. As night fell over their respective laboratories around the world, each team member was left contemplating the same profound questions. Were they archaeologists who had stumbled upon humanity's greatest discovery? Or were they unwitting participants in an ancient plan that had been set in motion long before human civilization began? And in the depths beneath Antarctic ice, as mysterious signals pulsed with mathematical precision, something waited, patient, ancient, and perhaps finally ready to reveal the ultimate truth about humanity's place in the cosmos.